All right, welcome. Today is Tuesday, the 9th day of June, 2020. I'd like to welcome everybody, members of the audience, public here to our Weber County Commission board meeting. It's 10 o'clock on this day, and I'm Commissioner Gage Floor, Chair of the Commission. To my right, Commissioner Jim Harvey. To my left, Commissioner Scott Jenkins. We welcome you here to be part of this public meeting. We're going to start the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance from our own Sarah Swan. Invocation will be given by Brian Barrett, and our thought of the day by Commissioner Harvey. Then we'll go to public comments. Let's go to that point. Sarah?
Our Father in heaven, we thank thee for this beautiful morning. We're grateful for this great country that we live in and the freedoms that we enjoy. We're grateful that we have the opportunity to participate in local government, and we pray that thy Spirit will be with us as we consider the matters that are on the agenda today. Please guide us and help us that we can make wise decisions and decisions that are in accordance with thy will and that would be for the good of the people. These things we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you. You know, Commissioners, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of people use their discretionary times in different ways. There's been a lot of comments and a lot of attention given to people who held a position and didn't do so honorably. I am choosing my remarks today about a person who held the same position and did so honorably. Right here in our own town, on Jackson Avenue, on May 28th, Officer Nathan James Lyday was shot, being armed with a pad of paper and a pen in his hand. As we talk about the discretionary time one has to be able to make a difference, I wanted to publicly thank many in our community, not just though in our community, but many throughout the state of Utah, whether they be city, county, or state, and many from surrounding states who came and offered as discretionary time respect for one who gave all, trying to protect a wife and kids in the same household. I particularly want to thank all those who were involved in the memorial service on Saturday morning. There were many things that went on behind the scenes, from not just the preparation of the grounds and the chairs that were set up, but even little things that most people don't pay attention to. The thousands and thousands of flags that were put up, the stages, the spider boxes that connect all the electrical power so an audio system could function correctly. The way people were dressed in the finest they had. The more than 1,000 cars that were in the procession that followed, and the tens of thousands that were along the route as he was interned in the Lindquist Cemetery just above South Ogden, Uinta there out south. I'm grateful for men who have the courage to honor their position and do so with fidelity and genuine care. And I, for one, in this commission, am grateful for the partnership we have. I love where we live. I love our community members because they care about the right things. I love so that whether it was on a procession line or whether it was a peaceful protest, we've chosen to do all those things peacefully. That speaks to the character of Ogden. It speaks to who we are. It speaks to our leadership. It speaks to our respect one for another. And I'm grateful for all of you who played a part in that, especially those who taught those principles to the next generation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very appropriate comments for today's world in United States and state of Utah and Weber County. Thank you very much. Let's move now to public comments. And again, keep in mind we're going to limit this to 3 minutes. Anybody that would like to come before the commission at this point in time, please come forward. Linda.
Good morning.
Good morning. Appreciate you being here.
Linda, will you pull that microphone down closer so we can make sure we hear you?
Is that good?
It's better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, today's kind of library day on at the commission. At a commission meeting, we've got 3 important items on the agenda. I wanted to take just a minute to give you an update on the library reopening and to recognize that we have members of our library boards here, the Library Board and Development Board, Friends of the Library. But specifically, 5 of our building managers are here today. Haley Van Vlack from North Branch, Karen Burton from Ogden Valley, Deborah Smith from Pleasant Valley Branch, Holly Okahara from the main library, and Phoebe Carter from the Southwest Branch. And as I said, I'd like to report very briefly on our reopening of the library system that was done under the umbrella of all of these folks. As you know, we closed March 17th with a real-life example of what scientists say, what they mean when they say the state of the environment is nothing more than chaos, and that it would take someone with inordinate hubris to say that we manage chaos. But what we can do is find opportunities in them and exploit them. And I think we've seen that this last weekend again, as our nation has experienced that in this chaos there's always an opportunity to respond ethically. And it's that I want to address, and thank the commissioners for the opportunity that was given to us to reopen the library system. Seeking opportunities in chaos, we spent our time cleaning and doing grounds work and collection development and inventorying, but also looking for opportunities to improve. We've learned to record our programs and put them out on YouTube and Facebook and contact people in different ways. We've learned to issue electronic library cards. During the month of May, we checked out, circulated more than 40,000 electronic books and audiobooks. Now that's a drop in the bucket compared to the 250,000 we would have circulated if we had been open, but nonetheless, it was an opportunity for us to learn something new and to serve in a different way. May 1st, we opened for curbside services, which have been a big success and something we may continue well into the future. We opened the doors May 11th and invited people in a safe and productive way. And in June 1st, we opened our public meeting rooms. And all of this was done with your support for the ethics of inclusion of people in our community, including those regardless of their age or their health or whatever. I think that was a very important modeling that was done with your leadership. And as I say, the purpose of all of this is to recognize and thank you for your overriding support in what you do for the library system, but how you've led the community through this, and for giving us the opportunity to learn to do better. I want to also acknowledge the Finance Committee for the extraordinary way they've led us forward as a county and as a library system, and the health department and human resources and our legal counsel and purchasing and all the others in the county who have worked such a great team during these last few months. And say that whatever is on the horizon, we appreciate you looking for the ethical opportunities that are available and making them available to us to focus not on us as county employees, but on the people that we serve. You do great work, and we appreciate what you do for us. So thank you.
Thank you. Linda, stay there a second. So I just want to take this time to thank you, the library board. This has been a difficult time, and we wrestled, as you well know, with the opening, and one of the main assets of this county is libraries. And we felt it was very important to open the libraries as quickly as possible. Even though we did not receive 100% approval rating for opening, we felt it was very important for a majority of our community to get back to the libraries to be able to enjoy the resources there. So I just wanted to give you our thanks as the commission for a job well done. You've handled that very well. The efforts you went through to make sure that we did not increase the spread of the epidemic, that I think was very carefully planned out and executed. So I just wanted to give you thanks, as well as your library board. And I wanted to give recognition, if I could. You talked about your employees, but the library board is here. If they could stand, and we'd like to give them recognition. Make sure we have everybody here. We have Reed Spencer, Evelyn Burtonson, Kathy Jensen's here. Obviously, Linda's here. We have Cynthia Madsen and Marcia Harris. Did I miss anybody, Commissioner?
Got the ones, yeah.
So, folks, I just wanted to let you know again, working with Linda is a very important part of this county and this community. And what you do for this county and this community is amazing, and we very much appreciate your efforts. So thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Commissioner, this is your portfolio. Did you want to take an extra minute?
Well, you know, I've learned a lot from the board and the members on that board. I appreciate them very much. We have a great diversification of thought and action that goes on there. The one thing is they respect one another. I think they're very thoughtful and they carry out very well. I have nothing but the highest regard and respect.
Can I just say one
Can you
thing?
pause for a second? Sorry, I don't mean that, but you don't do that. I was just going into a tender moment, Ralph.
I thought you were through.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to get angry with you, Ralph.
It's all right.
But I do my best not to interrupt you, and that's the insensitive.
I thought you were through.
I know you did, but you... I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you folks there, but Linda, I appreciate you so much. You're a great example to me. You've given your life because you care, and you care. It's so evident, and I know there are people out there that don't fully understand. They don't appreciate because they don't fully understand all that you do and all that you think about there. I just really appreciate you and the leadership that you've not just done for your team, but you've done for me personally, and that's what I have to say, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jenks, you have anything? Okay, other public comments? Thank you again, Linda, members of the board, for being with us this morning.
And before I start my time, I just want to say, from the black community, we want to thank you, Linda. And you received, I received from you that letter that you did when I asked you months ago about
Ralph,
diversification.
Thank
you.
You're here to just address the commission.
Okay.
Ralph, I'm just going to remind you again, this is a 3-minute limit. I will cut you off at 3 minutes.
Okay.
You can cover as many subjects as you want in 3
I can in
minutes.
3 minutes.
But you don't have 3 minutes
Okay.
per subject, okay?
I just wanted to thank the board. from,
Okay, your time
because-
started. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to thank the board and everything too, that be passed on. I want to echo what was said by Commissioner Jake Harvey and everything about the thing, but I also want to remind that it is not they're just looking just for chaos or anything. There are groups that are actively participating in the protests and getting blame put on for a peaceful demonstration, asking to have dialogue. I feel just as much about Linda as you do, and the board right there. Just them sending that to me, I was able to take that and use that in the demonstration in saying that our board over here in Weber County are willing to look at diversity and looking to go ahead and bring in the thoughts that we might have. And I just want you to know that this is not, I take offense, person, when I just hear they say about the chaos that went on. It wasn't just the chaos that went on that happened. There was an actual demonstration that was peaceful that happened. And it was, we were blamed for what the anarchists and Antigua, we were blamed for what the crazy drug addicts and different ones did. And we take that responsibility that is not what we're doing. We're trying to look to there be awareness of what the situation is that's happening as black men, brown men, Chinese, everything, minorities, and that we might have dialogue about this. I also want to bring up the 3 minutes thing right here. If you have real interest in being able to hear from the public what there is to be able to be said, I would, you guys, commend you guys. You helped me so much. You helped me start the push to try to be able to get more food, to get more funding for our homeless, for the people that are in diverse situations. You guys was the first one to give me letters so I could pass it on to 6 other community councils here in Weber County and each one of the mayors. And our mayor is still bringing ours on in, but our city council jumped in it right after you guys. Weber County leads the way in so many different ways that you don't realize it. You guys are effective, but I do not agree with this 3-minute thing anytime, because you come up here, and like I am now, sitting here under pressures to be able to address an issue that is addressing not just the United States, but the whole world. But those particularly to try to convince to you and let you know that it is not productive either way to be just so blindly that you see chaos that was coming. There is not. There is an important issue that needs to be discussed and trying to get dialogue to you, but there is outside entities that is going ahead and diverting that, and so that the attention is on chaos. In Salt Lake City, it was a 5-block area that the whole thing happened. When we were coming up to the Capitol, it was already defaced by Antigua. Those things are happening. We had a great one here in Weber County, and I commend us because that's what we are. We are a leader, and I'm very appreciative that nationally now they are just bringing out how these other things are coming into the demonstrations. We're just asking to be heard. They are trying to go ahead and have anarchy for the United States. We are not a part of that, and we are a disgrace that that is happening. But yet and still, we want to have dialogue about issues that we see from our perception to be different from yours. I'd like to commend. I took the time to be out, and right here I have Becca DeHart, who's we did the route for the body to be carried. I was with a wheelchair, the whole route from Lindquist Field all the way to it on Friday, so that for 2 nights that before that we could go ahead. But I honor, he was a great servant.
Ralph,
I just want
you've
you
got
to know
you've
that.
got 30 seconds.
Okay, I don't need you to tell me that. I know we only got 3 minutes.
Yeah,
But I just
yeah,
want you to know.
you're at the
okay,
end right
can I
now.
use my 30 seconds then?
Go ahead.
Then, so here we go, is that just right here, if you want to hear from the public and everything, that the countdown is on and everything, I just think that you need to be able to have flexibility a little bit away. There's not many of us that are going to talk during this time, so maybe if there's a group of people, 3 minutes apply. But maybe 5 minutes they can stretch it to or something, unless that's here. You were gone right at the time that you're only 30 minutes last week. So I was just wondering, why didn't they just take that extra time to be able to have public comment? That's all I got to say. Thank you very much, Linda and the board. You guys are awesome. I even told Salt Lake about you in Utah County.
Thank you, Ralph. And again, we appreciate your comments. The reason the 3-minute limit is that we're respective of everybody's ability to come in and talk and have their 3 minutes. This is not the only time, Ralph. Let me remind you that you have access to the commission and your public officials. You have opportunity, and you've been there in the commission office, spoken with us a number of times, we are willing to listen to you with appointments scheduled. So you know that very well. But during public meetings, we have protocol in place so that any members of our public that would like to talk, have it, and it's an equal basis. We don't want to have preferential treatment for anybody in the community. Everybody has their 3 minutes. At the point in time we decide that needs to go to 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that will be a decision of this commission. So, thank you, Ralph. Appreciate you being with us this morning. Okay, let's move now to our consent. Was there anybody else? I think that, Ralph, you were probably the last. I don't see anybody coming, so let's move to our consent items. Let's go to consent items F1, request for approval of warrants 2789 through 2806 and 449936 through 450105 in the amount of $572,834.77. 2, request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $51,539.57. 3, request for approval of minutes for the meeting held on June 2nd, 2020. 4, request for approval of new business licenses. 5, request for approval of retirement agreements by and between Weber County and Charlene Call. And number 6, request for approval of change order number 5 on Saunders contract, that'd be Saunders Construction, Ogden Valley branch site and utility improvements to adjust contract costs to add back credits and accommodate costs for mitigation of unforeseen site contamination, sandblasting, repainting driveway, security gate, and provide presentation equipment to facilitate public and staff use of outdoor education center / Bowery. That's our consent agenda. Consent items. Commissioners, comments, questions before we go to Mr. Hatch?
I have questions.
Go ahead.
On that, the way that read when it came to us, and I can't bring it up right now, it showed that library was an overrun of $1.6 million. And that had to be written incorrectly. Linda, that wasn't an overrun. We knew that was going to happen, right?
That's right.
That's correct.
Yeah, I didn't, maybe it was just the way it was written up. Ricky, did you see it that way?
No, I didn't.
You didn't? Okay.
As I looked at the change order, and Mr. Parks here, I thought the change order was roughly $46,000 thereabout. I'm recalling from last night when I read it.
I was doing this from memory.
Commissioner, I think the change
apologize.
order was about $46,000, a little less.
All right, I'm good with it.
Okay. Commissioner Harvey,
I'll make one other comment, if I may, Mr. Chair.
go ahead.
You know, back in 1994, May of 1994, I actually hired Charlene Call,
Really?
who's now retiring from Weber County and gave decades of great service. Probably the best nurturer I've ever met, and I wish her well in her next chapter. That's
Nice.
all I wanted to just say there.
Nice. Let's go to Ricky Hatch.
Good morning. We issued 11 purchase orders this week for $52,000. Just about half of that amount, $25,000, was for the transfer station, and that will go primarily to emergency repairs and staffing, but is also going to purchase some compost colorant. 31% of that amount, or $16,000, is for the library, and that will go to purchase books, materials, and some processing supplies. For checks, we issued 188 checks this week for $573,000. 26% of that amount, or $149,000, is for the library, mostly for the Ogden Valley branch construction, but also for books, materials, utilities, and maintenance. 18%, or $101,000, is corridor preservation funds that were used to purchase properties on West 12th Street, Skyline Drive up in Pleasant View, and Larson Lane. 8%, or $43,000, is for the jail, and that went to air conditioning repairs, utilities, as well as inmate clothing. And then 7%, or $41,000, is for the roads department to go primarily towards road supplies, including a nice big purchase of magnesium chloride.
Questions for Mr. Hatch? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent items as listed in today, June 9th's agenda. Items number F1 through and including F6 is presented.
Thank you. We have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move now to action items. Number 1, G1, request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County appointing a member to the Weber County Library Board. Now we know why some of these board members are here. Commissioner Harvey, it looks like you're presenting.
Thank you very much. You know, Commissioners, we, in our library board, excuse me, I'll get there better. On our library board, on a staggered basis, the terms for the library board come up. Currently, there is a position open that's available. We had some members of the public apply for this open seat that's at large, and the board has made the recommendation that we reappoint Di Allison back to the board. I've known Di since I've been on the board for 3.5 years. She not only attends, she cares, she's there all the time, and does so thoughtfully. She does so with an open mind. She weighs out the different issues that come to the board, and you'd be surprised at the different things that are brought to the library board. But I think she makes good decisions. As a side note, she is functioning currently as the board chair and is doing a wonderful job after after her appointment, and I'd make the recommendation that we reappoint Di Allison back to the library board.
Okay, that's a motion, I'm assuming, for resolution.
I'd like to make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Discussion. Commissioner Jenkins?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion?
Commissioners, that's Resolution 12. Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye, thank you. Carries. Resolution's passed. Thank you. Let's go now to our next action item, request for approval of an ordinance of the County Commissioners of Weber County establishing a library capital project fund. And Brian Barron was on that, but I believe Scott Park is going to handle that. Right, Scott?
Correct. Good morning, Commissioners. So what you have before you is a draft ordinance that will establish a library capital projects fund. What this does, it allows the commissioners to save money for future capital improvements to the library facilities. Money in this fund could be used for the purchase of real property for a new library or an expansion of an existing library. It also could be used for the cost of planning, constructing, or rehabilitating Weber County library facilities. So what we're trying to do is carve out a separate fund which will be used to collect donations from outside individuals and dedicate that money specifically to library facility improvements or constructions. It would also allow the commissioners to appropriate through the regular budget process money into this fund to save for the repair and replacement of existing library facilities or the construction of new facilities. And it also would allow the commission to set up a transfer so that if there is any unused surplus budget money at the end of each year, a portion of that could be automatically put aside into that savings account. Once the money goes into that account, it's dedicated to the library facilities, and that way we could save money for the future so that in a few years or in a few decades we have money set aside to maintain these facilities and we don't have to rely on pulling money from the operating budget to make these capital improvements. So that's what this ordinance does in a nutshell. It's basically gives us an opportunity. It doesn't require us to put any money in there, but it gives us the opportunity to save for the future to make sure that our facilities will have the sufficient amount of money for the repair and replacement.
This basically protects, sorry, Mr. Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Basically protects libraries in the moving forward.
Correct. It establishes a way that we can maintain them in perpetuity.
If Mr. Chair, if I can continue, then, Mr. Park, if at some future time, money that was put aside into this fund, if the commission chose, or a future commission 20, 30, 40 years from now, say they wanted to use those funds for another purpose in the county, what would have to take place? Is it possible? And if so, what would be the process by which those things would take place?
So once the money goes into this fund, it's dedicated for the purposes of the fund. In order to pull money out of this fund, it would actually require a vote of the people to approve pulling money out of this fund. Now, the commissioners do not have to appropriate money, so let's say in 5 years from now we go through a really tight budget crisis. You don't have to add any money to that fund. So, but once the money gets into that fund, it's dedicated to those purposes, and it's very difficult to use that for anything other than the library facility improvements.
Thank you. Mr. Park, right now I would say because of the COVID-19 and the situation, this could be easily classified as a difficult time. How are we doing financially right now? Is this a time that we would think about pulling out monies from like a library fund, or where are we right now with Weber County?
So Weber County is actually in really good shape financially speaking. Not that you ever want to have a crisis like this, but we were about as well positioned as we have been in the last decade to have a crisis of this nature. John Bond and Ricky Hatch, along with myself and some others, anticipated a slowdown in the economy in 2020. Now, nothing like what we saw with COVID, but we had anticipated a slowdown anyway and had been preparing to absorb any downturn in the economy related to that. So our fund balance is as high as it has ever been in the last 15 years. And we have plenty of cash reserves so that we're going to be able to weather this fairly well. Now we're already taking steps. We're being conservative. We've put a soft purchasing freeze and a soft hiring freeze. We're still trying to manage our money and be prudent with what we have. But we are in good shape to be in a position to help stimulate the economy when things come back, and we're in a good position to keep moving forward.
Thank you. So in your professional position as our comptroller for Weber County, we're in a good position financially. Does this library fund, does it make it possible moving forward then for any future commission to also have a somewhat of a level of comfort that the libraries would be in a good position financially to make sure that those facilities are maintained and kept up?
So that's a big question. Let me break it down a little bit. So right now, the library has a large fund balance. That money was built up over time in anticipation of these new library projects. Linda managed her financial budget very well. I've never seen a project that was that large that came in under budget or even on budget. Usually they have multiple change orders and they go way over budget. So we have set aside some money, some one-time money that's in the operating fund balance right now. That money, if we leave it in the operating fund balance, could be used for general operations. So it could be used for salaries and wages. It could be used to buy, new books or to buy another chair. We don't necessarily want to use that money that was raised and built up for capital facilities to be used in the regular operations. So that's what this fund is doing, is setting up a mechanism where we can put aside some of that money. Now, the library operating balance, we've talked about this in our 5-year projections. We're reaching the point where, because we brought on a new library facility, the operating costs of the library are going to exceed the revenues brought in for the library. So we're watching that. We still feel that this fund is a good idea because it's going to allow us to set aside the one-time monies that were intended for capital projects, for capital facilities. We're going to be able to set that aside and ensure that that's used appropriately and not spend it for operations. So you asked about the financial sustainability of the fund. We've talked about that in our budget hearings. We've talked about that in our 5-year forecast. The library fund is a fund we need to watch to make sure. I mean, we brought on a brand new library. There are going to be increased operating costs. If we were to bring on a new facility or a new expanded facility, there would be additional operating costs. So we watch the one-time monies and we track those separately from the ongoing operating costs, the in and the out. So right now the Commission is in a good spot to set aside some one-time monies, money that was generated, one time is not ongoing. We're able to set those aside for one-time projects and not use one-time money for ongoing operational issues. But we're still in a good spot to set aside some money now and maintain our operations at our current level of service for the next few years.
Great. So what I'm hearing from you is when the vote of the people took place to refurbish or to build new libraries, they voted to increase the number of libraries. When that vote took place and the vote came out to, the people voted to build new libraries. At that time, did they also vote to increase the operating expense of the libraries to run additional buildings? And if not, where do you see, what are we going to need to do?
So at the time of the vote, there was no additional money set aside for operating the new libraries. The people voted to approve a bond to construct a new library facility. Now, with the construction of a new facility and the opening up of another floor in the main library, there are additional operating costs that come along with that. The bond was one-time money used for construction, so there was no discussion at the time that I'm aware of, and this was before I was here. There was no discussion as to what we do to fund those ongoing operational expenses. We knew at the time that there would be ongoing operational expenses with hiring new people to staff a new building.
Thank you. At the first of your presentation, and this will conclude my questioning, Commissioner, at the first of your presentation, you were complimentary of Ms. Wangsgaard, her staff, and the managers of each branch with how efficient they're running, at least my interpretation is how efficient they are running the operations and the budget of the libraries, especially considering the renovations and the new construction, how they were at or below, but they came in under budget with a budget this size. In your professional opinion, Scott, do you feel like the library budget is being managed efficiently and with care and the way it should be?
The library budget is a very tight budget, and it is managed, in my opinion, very well. I would say, kind of as a cautionary note, it is almost being managed too well, to the point where those payroll costs have been, Linda has been so good with her payroll costs that I wonder if she's going to be able to sustain what she's doing in the long run, because she's got some really good employees. She's working them, and they're doing a very good job. But with the job economy, before this whole COVID thing came out, it would be very hard to hire somebody into the library system. Linda's done a very good job at keeping her employees and doing the best she can for them. But at a certain point, just with the job market, nobody wants to be a librarian for what we're willing to pay a librarian, if that makes sense. So she's managing her budget very well. Yes, I would say that. The only thing I would add, and Linda can speak more to this, is that in the future we're going to have to consider a salary survey to make sure that we're competitive so that we're retaining the best staff. But that's something that we're looking forward to in the future, and we're trying to plan for that now. But yes, Linda manages her budget very well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Park. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those remarks. Commissioner Jenkins, do you have any comments?
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
So this fund that we've decided to set up, I want to make sure I understand it very well. Who controls that fund?
This is a Weber County controlled fund, controlled by the Weber County Commissioners.
Right. Okay. Very good. And so one of the things that we plan on doing as commissioners is taking surplus bond money that we have and put in that account. And the purpose of that is so that we can address future libraries and future maintenance repairs. Now, we've just done pretty good maintenance repairs, so I don't anticipate we'll have any major maintenance repairs out there in the future. So we'll save this for what it is. It's pretty much saving for another library someday out in the west part of the county somewhere, west or northwest, where we don't have one. And that's one of the reasons I'm supporting this. I think this is very good to have this done. And that's a statement, not a question. So in that library fund today, of course it's zero now, but in the library fund that has these surplus bond dollars, what do we show that balance today?
So I'll just clarify. We have about $8 million as of the end of 2019, about $8 million in there. Now, it's
Right.
not surplus bond proceeds. It's money that we had set aside in our operating budget for construction and improvement of libraries, but we didn't need to use it because we had bond money
Right.
that paid for it. So I just want to be clear that it's not surplus bond proceeds, it's surplus operating
Depends
funds.
on who's talking about it. But you're right. Okay. So my hope would be that we could put 5 or 6 million of that in this account. And that, I realize, will be a negotiating factor as we get to the budget session this year when we decide what to do. But I'm anxious. The reason I support this, what ends up happening, people who look at this budget will say you have plenty of money whereby you can operate, but that is trending down. And so if we don't adjust the amount of revenue that we bring in for libraries, it'll only be a matter of a couple of years, and we'll burn that down to a point where we'll have to increase taxes anyway. So I'm of the opinion that we should really do that this fall when we get into the budget cycle, and then that will make that amount so we can capture it. And once we can capture it, then we can put it in here, and it gives us a great start for another facility. So I am of the opinion that we're being very fiscally sound with this move that we're making, number one. Number two, I question whether we wanted to continue to support the library system at the level we are. There's no question, when this came up for a bond vote years ago, I questioned that. I wasn't in the position I'm in at the time, but I was a senator, state senator at the time. It was towards the end of my time as a state senator, and I questioned that, whether we wanted to continue. But, it went to the people to a vote, and they voted, and resoundingly voted to do this. And so, in my mind, I have no question about that now. I'm not going to fight it. There's a lot of things that still happen at a library every day, and I want to support that. And so that's one of the reasons I've decided to support this new fund we're making and lock these dollars up and protect them. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I had a chance to make my statement there of why I've decided to support this.
Good, no, I appreciate it. So I just wanted to be clear, Scott, I need to make a statement on this as well, that this fund would also allow maintenance items. And I would agree with Commissioner Jenkins, the long-term may be for a new library, but I'm as concerned with building maintenance. So maintenance on our existing buildings would be able to utilize this fund.
That is correct. We have it defined for the purpose of acquiring real property, the cost of planning, constructing, or rehabilitating Weber County Library facilities. So if we need a new roof,
Right.
if we need to replace the windows, if we need a big, something that's not just like a regular repair and maintenance, but, bricks and mortar type issue, then we can use this money for that purpose.
And the reason I bring that up, Commissioners, in a previous life at the legislature, I had the opportunity to oversee all our state buildings, construction through maintenance and operation. So, and I came to realize after 12 years down there and millions of dollars in new state buildings that I had the opportunity to be involved with, there's far more to these costs to the taxpayers than just the construction cost of this buildings. After the building's built, we have to keep them up. And there has to be a fund established to keep those buildings up, because unless we want to keep these buildings in what I would call excellent condition, then they start losing value for our community. So I'm in favor of this primarily, and I would look first to make sure that we maintain these buildings prior to building any new buildings, because I saw that happen at the state where as buildings age, we have a thing called depreciation. And that depreciation requires that we put money into these buildings. There's also a thing called operations. We called it O&M at the state. So two factors become very important as we look at these assets for any government. First would be the cost of construction, but as we look at state buildings, and I think it'd be very true to county buildings or the government buildings, that within 25 to 30 years, the cost of maintenance and operations exceeds the cost of construction. So we need to keep that in mind. And then with that is what we call programming, we call operations. So anytime you build a new building, in this case, Linda needs to go out and hire new people. And that becomes a burden to the taxpayers in programming our operations. So I would just make a note that two critical cost elements enter into this, Commissioners. First would be maintenance. We want to be the shining star of our library system. We need to maintain them. And we need to make sure that they're operated, which is going to involve cost. And we need to be very aware of that as we look at this fund balance and as we look at whatever we put into this fund in the future, that's kept in mind. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, Commissioners. I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion that we approve the ordinance of the Weber County Commissioners establishing a library capital projects fund.
It's the first reading, Commissioners.
First reading.
Well, okay, fine. I'll approve the first reading, Fatima. Thank you for keeping us straight on that. I don't think there's anything else I'd like to read into that either, so leave it like that.
And we have a second?
We have a second.
From Commissioner Jenkins. Okay, Fatima. First reading. We don't need to take a vote at this point in time.
Oh,
Just
Take a
approval.
vote, but no ordinance number.
A vote, but no, she doesn't, just a vote as a body.
Okay.
There's no ordinance number.
No ordinance. Okay, got it. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. So I want to make sure that we follow up on Commissioner Harvey's motion, because that was a motion.
Yes.
Yeah,
So all those in favor?
thank you.
aye.
Aye,
Chair votes aye, thank you.
thank you.
That is the first, just so we're clear, that is the first reading of this.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, let's move now to approval, another resolution, which would be Agenda Item 3, request for approval of two resolutions of the County Commissioners of Weber County appointing 2 members to the Weber County Career Service Council. I'm assuming that's a resolution for both those members. Our own Sarah Swan. Go ahead, Sarah.
Good morning, Commissioners. There's actually 2 separate resolutions, but they're both for the same thing, of course, for different people. Utah Code requires that we have a 3-member Career Service Council. This Career Service Council hears any employee grievances or appeals, so upon demotion, any loss of property, termination, they could appeal to this council. Now, the council doesn't always hear those cases. We have the opportunity to refer those to an administrative law judge as well, which we sometimes do, but that requires the request of this council to refer it to the ALJ. The 2 people we have here are both currently serving on our Career Service Council. They have been for some time. They've both been great members. The first is Robert Hunter. They should be individuals who are sympathetic to the merit principles of county government and familiar with county government as a whole, but not county government employees or elected officials. Mr. Hunter was a past county commissioner. There's also Marcia Owen, who again is currently serving and has for some time. And she is a former Weber County employee. They have both agreed to serve for another 3 years. Our other member is Jan Zogmaster, who is in the middle of her term right now. So we're requesting approval for Ms. Owen and Mr. Hunter for a 3-year term to our Career Service Council.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
Commissioners, back for action or questions?
No, they're both, I know them both, and they're both very fair people. Marcia was the purchasing agent here, Commissioners, for decades, and boy, she did a wonderful job. So with that, if you're,
I'm ready.
I'll make a motion first that we approve Robert Hunter to the Career Service Council. That's a separate motion for that resolution.
Got it. And do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Resolution.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
And Chair Four?
Aye.
Mr.
Motion carries.
Chair,
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve Miss Marcia Owen to the Career Service Council.
Thank you.
I'll second
We
that.
got a second. Fatima?
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chair Four?
Aye. Thank you. Carries. Motion carries. Thank you. Unanimous. Okay, let's now go to Agenda Item 4. Request for approval of an agreement by and between Weber County and the Federal Highway Administration, Central Federal Lands Highway Division, for project scoping of the Kazi Reservoir access improvements, Federal Lands Access Program grant. This is a grant that we're working with the Forest Service on, You're not Mr. Wilkinson.
Nope, we'd like to excuse Sean today.
All right, okay. Welcome. Go ahead,
So,
Bill.
Like you mentioned, the Utah Program Decision Committee accepted our application for all the improvements which included rehabilitating, paving the road around Kazi, some of the pullouts, widening the roads, improving some of the drainages, and formalizing the existing parking structure. We made it through the initial process, and we're on the short list, and so what this is just an agreement with them for the scoping portion of that work, so we can continue down that to see if we can get the final approval for that project to happen.
So this is just the scoping to come up with an idea of exactly then what possible construction and the dollar amount,
The
et cetera?
costs and everything, and so, yeah. And in the application, it has, there's contributing factors, the match and things, which is all provided by the Forest Service, so this is at no cost to the county.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
it's just working the process for the grant.
And this is a much-needed project on the Kazi side of the road going up to the Boy Scout camp. And
Yep.
I mean, if anybody's been up there, we know that road condition is less than average.
Yeah, and it's gonna help all year round, so it's gonna help for those residents of Kazi Estates during the snowmobile season. It's gonna be year round, so, you know, we'll probably take on a little bit more with the road work to be done, with plowing and some things like that, but some of the things that they mentioned in there, you know, is they're going to be widening the road. They're going to be working on some of the pullouts for recreation activity. Also, some of the areas of access onto the reservoir. So the overall project's going to be wonderful for those that utilize that area up there. So
Good. Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
it does.
Commissioners?
You've made every motion today.
Well, I'm not ready to make a motion, but I'd like to make a comment on this one.
Go ahead, make a comment.
Well, I thought he was going to make a
I
comment.
am going to make a
See, I'll
comment.
wait. I'll yield. Go ahead.
All right, go ahead. Commissioner Jenkins, the floor is yours.
Well, we've had several meetings on this project, and I'm looking forward to having it done. It's amazing how the innovation of new products changes the way we use certain things. And when that's a non-motorized facility up there, Kazi is, and when they innovated these paddle boards and the different canoes that they have now, and these different boards that Lifetime and different ones make, well, all of a sudden the use up there has just exploded. You used to go up there and see 2 or 3 people on that. Well, now you see, it's common to see hundreds of people up there. Well, there's no place for them to park. There's no place for them to, it's just they're wearing it out. They're using it to death. And truly some maintenance like this needs to be done so that it can be used more comfortably. And so I'm very much in favor of this. In fact, I'm excited. I would love to make a motion. I'm not sure I can.
I think you can, yeah.
Okay. I'd make a motion that we approve this agreement between Weber County, the Federal Highway Administration, Central Federal Lands Highway Division.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second with comment, Mr. Chair.
Please.
This also, and you've done a great job, Commissioner, in those comments. And if I might just add to them, Weber County enjoys a fantastic relationship with the Forest Service. Over the decades, this hasn't always been the case with just our neighbor that's over one street, one block to the south and one block to the east. It's not always been the case. But Sean Harwood, who is the director over there, has been really good to help us. And he's the one that's really orchestrated and helped direct this effort so that those areas up there are better for all people who choose to use them for whatever reason, whether they're going to fish or recreate or just view, to make them safer. And he's an Ogden boy, another Ogden boy, born boy that's done really good and through his whole career has given back. He could have retired, but he chose to stay on and take his last turn here in Ogden from Colorado because of circumstances in his life and his now, like many, giving back. And man, we've got great people here. And Sean's another hero, local hero. So I hope that he knows how much we appreciate this. And Bill, way to go! You guys carrying this. It's a huge bucket. Appreciate you doing this. I'm excited to get this thing going.
Yeah, and one thing that as we look at ongoing costs after these improvements, it's going to be a little while. It's it's kind of scheduled to fund in 2025. The work to be done in 2026 is still a ways off, but when we look at the amount of county dollars that we spend trying to keep some of those roadways up that's been deteriorating over the year because of water or a lot of different areas, it's going to take away most of that. And so our maintenance as a county and costs go down significantly in regards to repair and maintenance of this as well. So huge benefit to the citizens of Weber County and us as Weber County as a whole. So.
Yeah, this is going to be a much-needed project. I actually was up at Kazi just a week or so ago, had my granddaughter up there. I think it was an early Saturday or Sunday morning, and the number of people up there at that time of the day just amazed me. And I told her, I said, you know, not too long ago, well, it was probably 50 years, but I remember the time that I'd take a canoe out there and probably be the only canoe on the lake on a Saturday or Sunday. And she looked at me and said, "Grandpa, you must be getting real old because there's about 100 people out there right now." I said, "Yeah, McCarty, you're exactly right. I am." But
Is that where that song, "Now I'm alone in my little canoe"?
I remember singing it back then, yeah.
Well, you were alone in your little
I was
canoe.
alone in my
with
canoe.
mine.
Yeah, I was alone. You're right. Okay, enough of that. So we had a motion from Commissioner Jenkins. We had a second. This is just a approval of an agreement, so it's a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, carries. You have an agreement. Keep us posted on that if you wouldn't mind, Bill. Okay, thank you for that. That takes us to our agenda item H, Commissioner comments. The floor is open.
Thank you. My time?
Your time.
This has been a tough week for the county. When you look at all the things that have happened, we've lost a local police officer, Ogden City has, and there's just been a lot going, and it's kind of been a tough week. And I am way impressed with the way our folks have responded. Mr. Price brought up the fact that we had some local demonstrations, and we had some riots in Salt Lake, and our sheriff's department put in lots of extra time, not a little. And at one point, I think we had 40 or 50 officers in Salt Lake. And so we can do hard things in Weber County. And that's what this showed and demonstrated this week. As hard as it was on everybody, I didn't hear a word of complaint. The sheriff sent us pictures of them being involved in Salt Lake and what they were doing. They were involved locally in Ogden with their police. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful what our local sheriff did. And we can do some good things, and we did. And so we responded well this week, and I just wanted to thank all those involved. We really had a good week.
It's been a tough week, but we've made it through. Commissioner Harvey?
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, just to give recognition, I've had a number of conversations through the week, starting last weekend with the sheriff, and what they did was amazing. We've had communication with the Salt Lake mayor leadership, and they very much appreciate what we've done. We also need to give special thanks to our 911 providers. They also were under a lot of stress during this time, and they've done a great job. We've had a number of people step up to the plate this past week or two in what I would call difficult times. Hopefully we start seeing some easing up over the next month, 2 weeks, whatever that may be, but whatever that is, and I think our public safety people will stand up for what needs to happen, and our 911 people, and everybody here at the county that contributes so much of their expertise and professionalism to making sure this county's run in a very efficient and professional manner. So appreciate everybody that attended this morning. Thank you, and with that, I take a final motion.
Mr. Chair, can I say one more thing? You know, I appreciate what you said about 911. I kind of want to go back then for a minute. You know, these folks that run our 911 center, when you dial 911, you hear on the other line, 911, what's your emergency? They pick that thing right up. Well, behind the scenes, what you don't see is you go over there and there's a large room over there, and each one of these folks sit at a station. And that station has multiple screens, big screens here, and telephones. And so when they answer that, what's your emergency, it comes up on a screen where they're at and what's happening. And they can all see each other as this takes place. So when they get a call that an officer's down, you know, antennas go right up, and everybody's watching to see what's happening over there. Sorry, it's a little emotional. I didn't anticipate this. So anyway, as they do that, they're all watching, and these officers, they're pretty much in the same facility. They're right next to each other over there, so they know each other. And so they're watching who's down and what's happening and how it's evolving. And then, of course, they get the call in that they have an officer that's expired. Emotionally, really hard on these people. They can hardly sit there and take it. And the day just goes on because you have another call right after that and another call right after that. So they never get the chance to decouple until they go home. So it's really emotionally a hard job on those guys. They really struggle over there. And I feel really bad for them sometimes when these kind of things happen. And when Tina told us about it and was going through the process that they go through as they do this, your heart really goes out to these folks as they try to manage their emotions at the same time as doing their job. And it's really a tough deal, tough job. Anyway, heads up, or, you know, that's a really an attaboy for the 911 and what they've done over there. They've done a great job.
Yeah,
great job.
Thank you for expressing that. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand the stress and what they do for this community. And before I place that final motion, I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the citizens, and this goes back to what Ralph had said, and I've said this before in a somewhat public meeting, that the people of Ogden, Weber County, did this right. They had a peaceful protest. They showed up, they had their voice heard, and a voice that was needed to be heard, but they did it in a very legal and professional manner. They didn't damage any property. It showed our sister city to the south that there are people that can have their voice heard. They can protest in a legitimate way. And I think that we can be proud. I'm proud of our citizens that did show up for protest because it needed to be heard, but did that in a very professional manner and a legal manner, and one that probably made a difference, a lot more difference than causing damage and putting on a display that does no good. So thank you very much for the members of the public. With that, I will entertain a motion.
To adjourn. So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate everybody that was here with us this morning.